Hey, SNH fans. Today we are going to walk through some of the things that we would recommend for you to have when you are putting together a snake enclosure. We're not going to talk about necessarily putting the snake enclosure today. You'll have to stay tuned for another episode for that. But we're going to talk about a lot of the things that we would recommend for you to have.
Come on, guys. Hey guys, so the first thing we're going to discuss today is heating your new pet snake. So the first thing you want to figure out is how you're going to go about doing this. Ways that we usually do it here at SNH is by using heat tape, which is this here, and it conducts electricity through this and then heats up the bottom of your tank or the bottom of your tub, whatever you're housing your snake in. We actually build our own heat panels here in house in order to heat our snakes, but you're not going to be able to find that commercially. So right now we're currently looking for a new good commercial heat pad. The typical Exoterra, Zilla heat pads that you see out there just don't really give off enough heat, so we find that some of our customers have struggled using those. So you can find these commercially. You're just going to want to find the right one that's safe to use, and you can certainly run that by us to get our opinion to make sure that it's going to work for you. So that's what we use. And then we also have this over here, and now this is not a regular light bulb. This is not a regular red heating lamp. This is simply a CHE, which stands for a ceramic heat emitter. It only releases heat. It gives off no light, which is really great for a ball python because they don't need the extra light, and it's just giving a heat source so that you can keep your ball python at the right temperature. Now, the right temperature that you want to keep your ball python at is around 85 to 88 degrees on the cool side and about 10 degrees, on the warm side, and about 10 degrees lower on the cool side. And what you're going to do to control that is a thermostat. You never want to hook up heat in your snake's enclosure without a thermostat. Otherwise, it can get too hot in there and injure your snake. So this is a thermostat that you can just get online at Amazon. There's several different brands. They're all the same model, and you can just set the temperature that you want it to. There's a probe right here that you're going to stick on the bottom of your tub or on the heat tape to make sure that the enclosure is getting to the right temperature that you need it to.
Now, right there, you mentioned two different places where we could put the probe, Alex. One of the things would be we have seen some people who put the probe on top of the glass and some people who put the probe underneath on the heat tape. And of course, the recommendation would be depending on how it is that you're heating. We can actually make, if you like, we would be happy to make some of these for you. When you purchase a snake from us or whatnot like that, we can certainly make one of these for you. Heating tape actually is a little bit better just because of the fact that it is going to be able to let you heat things up a little bit warmer. CHEs are great, and if you're using a tank, CHEs are really good to help the ambient temperature go up, but what do they usually do to humidity?
They dry it out really quickly, and so ball pythons are we breed a lot of ball pythons here, and they need a good amount of humidity. And so if you're keeping it in a tank and using a CHE, it can get really dry in there, and you can have issues with shedding. You can have issues with the humidity being too low and the ball python not wanting to eat. So that's something you have to keep in mind when using a CHE and being a responsible pet owner.
But it does bring the temperature up on the ambient side of the ambient temperature of your tank up if you're running a tank. And so if you can't get it warm enough just from belly heat, then use a CHE. When we see people using a heating rock, the best way to use a heat rock is to unplug it and throw it away.
Yeah, those get way too hot, and there's no way to really control it, and so those aren't recommended. The snake usually burns themselves, whereas when you're using a heat tape or a heat pad and you can hook it up to a thermostat and monitor the temperature, then it's a lot safer and it heats your enclosure a lot better.
For the thermostat, you were mentioning that there are several different brands. Can you show us how we would go about using that thermostat right there?
So What you're going to do is you're going to plug this thermostat into the nearest outlet next to your enclosure. You're going to want to tape this probe to either the bottom of directly on the heat tape or inside the enclosure that you're using. It all depends on what setup is working best for you. And what you're going to do is you're going to press this set button right here, and you're going to set the temperature right here and press it again. And then that sets the temperature. And when this probe reads that it has hit that temperature, then it's going to shut all electricity off and stop any heat from getting to the enclosure. And then when it reaches below that temperature, then it'll kick on again. So basically you're maintaining that same temperature constantly by the amount of heat that you're emitting.
And your heating element plugs directly into your thermostat.
Yep, right here.
So the heating element is being completely controlled by the thermostat, just like your home heating and cooling system. And this is one brand. We're not even talking so much about this brand because there are several different brands, and you can get them all on Amazon. Not that we're advertising for Amazon, but you can get these from Amazon for a really reasonable price, a whole lot cheaper than you can get ones that are, say, made from Zilla or Exoterra that are made specifically for reptiles. You might want to look for things that are a lot of the ones that are useful are things that might be used in gardening, believe it or not, warming up seeds. But they're perfect for this, and they're really reasonably priced.
So the other thing that we're going to talk about with heat is monitoring your temperature in your enclosure. So the best thing you can do is get a digital thermometer and hydrometer. So here's a probe that reads the temperature, and here's a probe that reads the humidity. Both important things when taking care of a snake. And so basically, this is what we recommend. It's a pretty cheap digital thermometer. You can also get on online outlets, and you just set it up, plug these into your enclosure, and then you're able to monitor your enclosure. And if you need to then set your thermostat lower or higher based off of what this is reading, then you can do so. You can also get a temp gun right here. So all you got to do is point this somewhere, wherever you want to read the temperature, and it'll read you the temperature. And that way you can figure out what your snake's enclosure is like temperature-wise, and how you need to adjust your settings accordingly.
The digital thermometer and hygrometer is a little bit better than the ones that are the analog versions. A lot of times the analog versions that you stick in your enclosures are going to, they could be dangerous for your animal because they'll try to claw on them and, through them, whatnot like that. But the digital is going to be far more accurate. And
you can also keep this outside of the enclosure and only keep the wires in the enclosure.
Right, absolutely. And these are roughly $10 or $11 on Amazon. While you're trying to deal with your heat, I would make sure to just invest in at least one of these for your enclosure. That way you have a place to plug in your thermostat. You have a place to plug in the heating element, other than like if you're going to use a CHE. Again, with the CHE, you need to decide figure out what the ambient temperature is in your enclosure. CHEs are great if you need extra heating inside your enclosure, but if you can do without the CHE, then just try to go with belly heat. Belly heat is best advised when it comes to, especially with ball pythons. So definitely use, just pick up a couple of these. Obviously, Home Depot, simple enough. All right, every ball python needs a hide. When you purchase your ball python, you're probably going to need a hide that's about this size. Okay, this is called a medium hide box, and you can see what the measurements are right here. This is perfect for a hatchling ball python up through, in many cases, up through about a year or so, a little more than a year possibly. They need a couple of these in your cage, in your enclosure. If you're running a tank, you're going to want to have one on the cool end and one on the hot end. This just gives them plenty of space to get into. Ball pythons like to hide. A hiding ball python is a happy ball python. So we prefer these just because they are, yes, they're plain, but this plastic is going to resist molds and mildew. It's going to resist any sort of fungus or anything like that. They're really easy to clean. You can dip it all the way down into water and then clean it and disinfect it, and you're all set to roll. This hide is the largest. I mean, this is a large, and this hide is as big as you'll probably ever need for most ball pythons. Some big females may need one a little bit larger, but this is about the size. You may need an extra large for some females when they get on into their earlier years and they get really large for a ball python, that is. But for the most part, this size would be fine for forever once you pull them out of this size. Now these, there are several places that sell these. Reptile Basics is a great source of all things reptile. If you are a beginning keeper, we highly suggest that you jump onto their website and check out everything that they've got. But they have these hides, and the hides are really reasonable. And so this would be where we would probably suggest that you get them. Every snake also needs some sort of a water dish. Now, many of you are probably looking, oh my God, that's like a dog water dish. Yep, sure is. This is perfect if you have an enclosure and it's a tank, something like this. Obviously you can get the heavier ceramic dishes and things like that. Those are fine too. But the size, you don't need to get a huge water dish. Ball pythons particularly do not need to go swimming. If your ball python is soaking often, then one of two things is probably going on. One, it's not humid enough in their enclosure and they're getting ready to shed, or two, they may have mites. So if your ball python is soaking, then there could be something wrong. So you don't really need something that's large enough for your ball python to go swimming in, because that's not really what they're going to want to do. So that's a water, an absolute must, hide, and heat. So what about substrate? Do check here on our Facebook page and also on our website for another video that specifically talks about the different types of substrate. Depending on the time of year, we will change the types of substrate that we use. One of the things that we would recommend is that you don't put your ball python on aspen. Ball pythons on aspen, you're not going to have enough moisture. Those are great for colubrids, not so much for ball pythons. For ball pythons, you can use all sorts of mulch is one of the things, what is highly recommended. And you can get coconut mulch, you can get all sorts of things that are really expensive that are sold specifically for reptiles. One of the things that we would suggest though, save yourself some money. Big bag of mulch straight from the home improvement store. Big home improvement box store, Home Depot, Lowe's. Plain cypress mulch. Make sure that it doesn't have any color. Make sure that it doesn't have any other chemicals added to it or anything like that. Just plain cypress mulch. Mulch that might be sold as, moisture lock mulch, that sort of thing. Runs about $3 for a 50-pound bag. All you need, okay? You don't need to put 3 or 4 inches in the bottom of your enclosure. Ball pythons are not burrowing animals. They do in the natural habitat live underground, but they don't dig burrows. They don't need to have a burrow to dig in. They're not going to want to go up underneath it. So there's no need to do that. This is great though, especially if you're using a tank. This is perfect because it holds a lot of moisture. So with that, I think that's about all of the things that we recommend that you have. So that's heating elements, that's your water, that's your hide, The only thing we haven't talked about is an enclosure itself. And whether you are using a tank, which is probably the case if you're a beginning snake owner, or using a rack system if you pulled a rack from somebody else, or you bought your own rack system because you've got multiple snakes and you're trying to build that collection up, you need to think about what sort of substrate you would use. Like I said, check out the video that we have posted for substrates. We use paper. Our rats are going nuts behind me, and we know what's going on with the rats. They're busy back there making new rats for us. We use paper. We use a little bit of mulch, more mulch in the drier months of the winter. As we start getting into summer, we'll start pulling back on our mulch. Do not use sand. Do not use cypress. Do not use pine. Cypress is what you, I'm sorry, don't use aspen, not with ball pythons, I'm sorry. And you definitely don't want to use pine. Pine oils can be bad for snakes, so you definitely don't want that. All right, so that's just a little bit about what we would recommend for you to get if you are starting out with a new ball python, even if you have several ball pythons. If you have questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to leave some comments below. If you have any kind of feedback about what we recommended, please leave comments below and we'd be glad to address those. And with that,
We'll see you next time.
have a great one.